I've got all my, wait, who put the yellow one in there? Wait, there's a teal one on the bottom. Oh my gosh, next thing you know, wait, there's a difference between teal blue and teal green. Curses! Okay, I can start. Welcome to one of our next videos, and this one we are going to be completing sewing our blocks together, creating our background, our backing piece here, and then we're going to be going over stitching the ditch and completing our project. There are directions inside your pamphlet that you've printed out, and it starts on page 12, and that starts with the layering. So you're going to be able to follow along with the video and also be able to look at your directions. So that is one of the cool things about doing this project with us, is that you can follow along and you can learn it by visualizing it and also seeing it written out and seeing our finished product. So right here you can see our smallest one. So if you have a 5x7 hoop, this is the size it's going to finish, and on the back side you can see that we just stitched in the ditch, and then we did our binding by sewing onto the back and folding to the front. Then you see the next one that's larger, that's about 8-inch square, and then we did the ginormous one that's the 8AA size on the luminaire. And then we pieced it together, and we're excited for you to see how we do that. So we've laid out our blocks, and remember we flipped and rotated so we could get a nice little curve. We have color block 1 and color block 2. 1, color 2, color 1, color 2. And now all we need to do is piece these together. So what we're going to do, remember we had the black line here and our line there, so I'm going to fold these two over. Now when you look here, we cut all of our batting and stabilizer right up to that thread, which is the one we're going to be lining up with. So when I piece these together, first thing I'm going to do is take one of my 2 pins. I have a 1 and spare here. So I'm going to put that right through that corner there, and it comes out on my corner here, and then I'm going to put it into the corner right there. And if I was at home, I would put this in my mattress just like this, straight up and down. But today, so I don't embarrass the filmmaker, I'm just going to do it right here. I'm going to go like this. I think Brittany would probably wonder what I was doing if I brought my mattress in here so I could sew. So then we're just going to make sure that we're going straight along, and I got one of them white so you could see a little better. So we're going to have the black line right up to there. Take one more of my pins. I'm going to stick it right here in that corner piece, and then fold it up, and then look right here. So I need to go right to that little corner piece right there. I'm going to go straight up and down, and then I'm going to take my other pin and I'm going to pin it right there so it stays together. And if I want to, I can use some of these cool little clips. These are the minis. I really love these, especially when I'm doing some garment sewing. I'll actually use these instead of pins because they will hold very well. So if I want to, I can put a couple in here just to hold my seam, and then I will go to the machine, and when I stitch, I'm going to be stitching just to the left, which would be your right. I'm just going to stitch right inside. So if I was coming so you could see it on your machine, I'm going to come right here on the left side of this white thread, and that's going to be perfectly aligned with my 1/2 inch cut. what I'm going to do is just shorten my stitch length a little bit. I like to sew at 1.8. I think I've told people that before because I get OCD, and if the stitch is short, then I'm less likely to pull it out if it's not perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my needle right where my pin is, so I can just go right in here, right at that top corner there. I can always go back and stitch north. But I'm going to keep some of these open to see what, once I start finishing everything together. And then I'm using my open toe so I can see where my needle's going. I'm putting my glasses on because I won't see where the needle's going unless I do that. And then I'm going to stay, like I said, just to the left of my white bobbin threads here. And I'm using black thread so I can see where I'm at. And then I'm going to speed up a little bit. And then as I get close to there, I can just pull these little jobbers out as I'm going. And I can sew a little faster. And then I'll pull this out, start sewing again. And then pull this last pin out and finish off. And then I can do a back stitch if I want to. I'm mainly just trying to finish the edges. So got my little thread cutter. The foot comes up automatically here. And then I'm going to open this up. See, now I have an option here. If you look real close, you can still see a little of my white thread here. If I wanted to, I could pull all those threads out, but I can also flip it and sew it from this side and come back. I can see where I'm at right here. To the right of that, I need to be on this side. So I will sew it from this side and then we'll be good to go. Now I'm only going about a thread. I'm only going about a thread width away from the one that I just sewed. So that way I'm going to be staying right where I need to be. And now I've got a perfect join. And so what I'll do next is take my, we're going to put this next one on. Just like we did before, I'm going to put it frontwards, and then I'm going to use my pins to get my corners. Then I'm going to sew on the left side of my stitch here, and then I'll open it up. And you'll see that in a second. One of the most important parts of putting this together is pressing these open once you've got them sewn together. And so I use my little seam press if I'm just sitting by the machine, but this also will stop my chances of burning my hands with the iron. So all I'm going to do is just simply place down here, lift up, place down, lift up. There is a difference between ironing and pressing. What I'm doing right now is pressing my seams open. Garments, sometimes I'll go like this and I'll iron them, but I'm just essentially wanting to press those open so they will be nice and flat. Again, we'll roll this. So I'll do this on my sewing table sometimes just to get everything nice and flat before I come over. Sometimes I will use my finger nail to press it. Now all I'm going to do is just go like that, press it open, go like that, press it open. You're going to have some thickness in there. You can always layer it just like you do in garment sewing, just to get rid of some of that. But I will do that to both sections, and then I'll show you how to line up the last seam right here across here. We've got our seams pressed open, and our last seam is going to be right through here, lining all these up. And so I'm going to do exactly what I was doing before. I'm going to take my pin and put it in my corner, go right through to this corner. Make sure it's straight up and down, and use my big giant bullet pin, because you know how I only had 2 pins and I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Here it is. But we're gonna need more for this one, so we'll pull that out. Now we got our join here. So what I'll do is I'll pull this back. I got this white line so you could see it. I'm gonna put the pin just inside that white line, just inside this white line. Put my pin right there. Go layering up. And now remember, I press these open, so if I just curve that right through, it's just going to go through all my threads that I pieced together. I'm going to put it into my batting there. Come down here, do the same thing. Find out where my little white string is right there. It does come in handy to use something that's just a little different than your fabric color, background fabric color. So even if you use a light gray, like I did here, you'll be able to then take your pin, line it just inside that light gray line right there, right into my seam, straight up and down. And then I'm going to use a big pin, because that's what I got here. It's like one of those big quilt pins. You don't want to get stuck by one of those. And then here, last one, pop it right there. Get it a little up and down, and then pin. Now, if I had one of these that was a little looser, this one would be down onto the machine, which means I have to extend my pins out so I can see them, because the feed dogs will feed this looser material in and sew straight. Or I can pull, but I don't like to pull. I like to let the feed dogs do its work. So I'll sew with this side down, and then I'll meet you back and show you our last seam. So we finished our last seam right here across the thing. We got it pretty good and lined up. Jessica came in and I said, should I pull this out? And you know, because I'm just OCD like that, but it looks good. It looks good. So now we're on our last, second to the last step, and that's how are we going to finish this. So we've got 2 different ways. I'm going to show you one way here, and that's I'm taking my backing and I'm laying it across my quilt, and I can then go around here and pin around the outside, and then I'm going to sew it from this side and just go inside that last little thread right there, and I'll go all the way around, and I'll leave myself about a 6-inch hole right here on the side so I can turn it inside out, push my corners, and make a nice little envelope. And then I would just top stitch from the front and quilt it accordingly. And so we've quilted it right through the centers here, and then we put binding on it. So this is an actual quilt, how you can turn and flip it first, and then we will layer this. Now remember, instead of adding batting, you can add another layer of batting, but you already have batting in your piecework. And so the way I'm going to finish it is I'm going to take my back, and what I'll do is I'll lay it flat on here, and I will sometimes take my embroider's tape, the pink tape there, perfection tape, and I'll tape down my back so it's nice and flat. So what we're going to do is just 6 to 8 inches away. Do you see all this sort of white? That is, I have OCD, so this is like moderate for me. Sometimes I'll just keep putting it on there until I can't barely stand it. But now I'm going to lay this down. I'm going to be doing binding on my quilt. So I just need to make sure that we're in there. And then I'm going to cut. I'm going to stitch in the ditch here, here, and here. And then I'm going to put my binding on, and then we're going to be finished. And so if I pull this up, so we've got this nice and flat. And so as I do my binding, I will sew it onto the front and fold it to the back. I need to make sure that when I sew this side that I'm sewing it right along with this so I don't cover my point, because otherwise if we had a 2.5 inch binding and I did it normal, this is what we're going to have. We're going to have a flat little tip. Not a big thing if you put a butterfly right there, but I do like to have it a little more exact. So what we'll do is after I do my quilting in the ditch, I'm going to cut this at this one especially at a 1/4 inch, so that way when I sew on I'll just be able to flip over. But that's really the last few things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to sew and flip. So I'm just going to show you on a little piece of fabric how I turn everything inside out and finish my edge and top stitch. So I'm going to show you my little technique of how to sew and flip. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep one hole open on the entire project, about 6 to 8 inches. And on my little table here, I can actually see that. And so what I'll do is I'll do 6 inches here. I have my top and bottom layered, right sides together. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start and come in about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to rotate. So on this machine it has a pivot feature, so I don't have to keep trying to get the machine to lift its foot, all that stuff. And so what we'll do is we'll go all the way around. It's going to do that for me, and I'm just going to do this. So we're going to go all the way around our whole quilt, and then we're going to be coming up on the other side, and we'll be coming up 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, however you like to do your edges. And once we get here, I'm going to pivot, and then I'm going to come right up here, and I'm going to stop right here. Sometimes what I do is I actually will back stitch there, just so it has a little extra thread there so I don't pull everything open while I'm cutting. So now we have an opening here that will turn everything out. And so I'm going to turn my whole quilt out, and then I'll go in here and I'll push my corners, make sure that we got our corners nice and flat, and then I'll push these out. And so you're probably wondering right here, when I first did this, I sewed in. Can't really see it too well, but I sewed in at a 90-degree angle, and then here, when I finished over here before I cut the thread, I want to sew out a 1/4 inch. And then I call this magic myself. I sometimes think of cool things. So here's my opening right here. And so normally after I pulled everything out, and you've got this really wide opening right here that you have to close. Because I sewed 90 degrees here and here, all I have to do is pull the 2 ends, and the 2 pieces suck right in to where they're supposed to be. And then I can come right over here with my seam roller or my thing, and then I can just push, and it's in there at the same distance as my edge. And so my whole end is finished. And then I would go around the outside of my project and do an 1/8 inch top stitch. And then I'm done, my quilt is finished. Nice little top stitch, got my corners. And so that's if I wanted to sew and flip. And we'll do this little technique a lot once we start. I want to do some funky friend stuff. And if you ever remember my little sloth with the eyelashes, I like to use all the accessory feet for the sewing machines to make the fabric and stuff. So we'll be doing that. So my last step on the one that I did with the tape is just to get this straight and start to sew, and I'm just going right down the ditch. Now there is a ditch quilting foot for pretty much every machine, so you could do that and line up all your little pieces like that. And once you get to a point where you have all your colored fabric here, you just want to make sure that all your bulk is nice and flat, and slow down a little bit so you can see where your stitches. So I'm going to try and go on to the black fabric here to make sure that you don't really see it. If I swerve over to the colored fabric, like either the white or the orange, you're going to definitely see my quilting. But I think I can get right through here, and I'm just trying to get past my orange, and then I'm gonna get right back into that ditch there and sew right to the end. And that's how I will stitch in the ditch. And so when you look at it real close, you're not going to really see any of my work. And then once you've done all 6 lines, you'll actually see just the grid work on the back of your project. And that's really all the quilting you need if it's going to be a wall hanging. It does look pretty cool from the front, and if you wanted to, if you're a good quilter, you can come in here and you can go around each one of your triangles. Okay, that would be fun, and it would be nice and quilted. You could also just come a 1/4 inch outside and do some really cool quilting like that all the way around, and that would you'd all have to do, and you wouldn't have to do stitch in the ditch, because you would still have enough quilted about every 5 to 6 inches for the batting that we've been using. And then if you have like the luminaire, you can actually scan this section, and you can use some of those cool design center quilting fills in through there. If you have the ability to use a pro stitcher, you can just put this onto your pro stitcher. Even if you've already had it bound, you can still just pin it on by the binding, and then you can set your area, crop it, put your stuff in those triangles. This would be a great place to do some of the new upgrades to the pro stitcher for triangles. Or you could do just something as simple as just sew and flip. Use your little buttonhole tacking stitch just in different areas. And then you can come by and put your butterfly on. And so we're going to have a special guest that's going to show us a little quicker way to finish the edges of our butterflies. This is one that was done previously. You're going to see some other ideas for the butterflies and different ways to do it. And then once we've finished, so this is the top, this is the back, and once we've finished, we can either hot glue these, or I may even just take black and just straight stitch them on there, so that way they'll still be a little free on there. If you didn't like the way this was shaped, you could just wet it again and then reshape it. So don't forget that, because we didn't pull all of our stabilizer out of there. And so at the end, you're going to see everything finished. But definitely, I'm gonna just stitch in the ditch on this one until my skills get better, and then I'll either free motion some feathers in here, or I'll get it on a long arm and do things like that. So, but you're going to see it done here pretty soon, and we're excited to have you with us. I have to say that it's been quite fun, and so we'll see you soon.